Oh, let's try that again. We now call this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order at 6:01 p.m. Please give your attention to this short video.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thanks, Emily. Could you please conduct the roll for us?
Member Ash,
Here, just as a member today.
Member Bankert,
Present.
Member Esquivel, Member S.L. Sego,
Present.
Member James,
Present.
Member Miller,
Present.
Member Saunders,
Here.
Member Stark,
Here.
Member Wayne,
Here.
Vice Chair Lovejoy,
Present.
and Chair Clark.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum with members Shahal, Patel, Shakiran, and Torf absent.
Thank you, Emily. Next item on the agenda would be public comment. Have we received any written public comments?
We have not received any written public comments, and there are no hands raised.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public at the moment?
There is not.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which includes a summary of actions from our June 26th meeting and acknowledgement of the member attendance log. Are there any changes or comments from the committee?
Motion to approve. Second. Second.
Emily, I assume we've not gotten any written public comments on the consent?
We have not received any written public comments.
Thank you. And no one on public to speak, so we've got the motion and the second. Emily, please conduct a roll call vote.
Member Ash,
Aye.
Member Bankert,
Aye.
Member Esquivel, yes. Member S.L. Sego,
Aye.
Member James,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Saunders,
Aye.
Member Stark,
Yes.
Member Wayne,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovejoy,
Aye.
Chair Carr.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with members Ajir, Chahal, Patel, Shakiran, and Torf absent.
Thank you, Emily. We will now move to our regular agenda items. Today there are 3 informational items. The first will be introduced by the illustrious Matt Kelly and presented by Stephanie Hu. So over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Matt Kelly, Principal Transportation Planner with the Authority. I'm here to present Stephanie Hu and this item. As you may remember, back in May, Stephanie was here to talk about the northbound I-680 Express Lane completion project, and really she was focused on the fact that we were just about to release, or had released, the draft environmental document. She went over all those alternatives that were being considered, and now she's got an update on that alternative selection process and I think she's going to throw in a very, 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 very good news story at the end. So that was 4 varies. So I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me back. And just, yeah, like Matt said, I'm just focusing on what happened after we released the DED draft environmental document and the decisions of selecting an alternative. So, let's see. Hello. Cool. So just as a refresher, the project location is northbound 680 in Contra Costa. The existing express lane ends in Navorna, shown in gray on the map on the bottom of the page. The southbound side, the express lane network is complete. We're focusing on the northbound. The project is to either close or reduce the existing gap here in the express lane system. So on the map, the gap right now is light blue, pink, and light blue. That section doesn't have any managed lane, so no express lane or HOV. The dark blue is the existing HOV lane, and so we're looking to close this gap. The common across all the alternatives that you'll see is the dark blue area where we're converting the HOV to an express. So just purpose and need of the project is to reduce peak congestion, travel time on northbound 680, encouraging carpool users, carpools to use the express lanes, and then also transit will benefit from an express lane, offering improved travel time reliability, and then offering those who are not carpool drivers the ability to pay into a managed lane. The project will address the need of congestion relief, continuity of the system for the express lane, and also addressing some movement and conflicts at the Lawrence Street Boulevard area. So before going to all the alternatives, there are key design elements that what we went over last time, the HOV conversion, that dark blue that we looked at earlier, realigning southbound 680 around 24 interchange to make room for a physical northbound continuous express lane, braided ramps to separate the Treaty Boulevard off-ramp and the Lawrence North Main on-ramp conflict to make things safer for merging and more efficient improving operations in that area, adding a lane physically to add an express lane, and then lastly, converting the one lane in the inside to an express lane. That's the GP conversion. So we looked at 4 build alternatives. 1C completely closes the gap, so it includes that realignment of southbound 680. And alternative 2 leaves the gap, what's shown in pink, and it has braided ramps for that alternative. Alternative 3 is basically 1C and 2, so closing the gap plus braided ramps. And then alternative 5 reduces the gap, again leaving that pink area alone as a gap, but the rest of it in light blue would be a conversion of GP lane to an express lane, and then north of 242 is the same across all the alternatives, HOV to express. This is a summary of costs. Alternative 5 is that GP conversion is the least costly, mainly because that we don't need to comply, or it's screened out of SB 743, the VMT mitigation obligation. The second line in this table shows the induced VMT for all the other alternatives. Because it is adding a lane, it does induce VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, and that has associated cost to them. So more VMT induced, more capital and O&M costs for the mitigation that we're proposing. And they were 3 mobility hubs that support an express bus on 680 using hydrogen fuel buses, and then also travel demand management program, or TDM program. So those are the 3 strategies that we proposed. And those would be for 20 years, and that's what those 2 lines speak to. So we released the DED out to the public between May 8th to June 24th, and thank you for this group being participating in that process. Hopefully you provided comments if you so desired, but those were helpful for us to gauge the public interest in the project, as well as what they would like to see as an alternative. We utilized social media, electeds newsletters, different stakeholder outreach, groups and presentations were made, email blasts, and we have a project website, also created a video for the project, as well as a VMT explainer. Those are all found on YouTube. So these were sort of things that we did to highlight the release of the document. We had 2 public meetings. One was virtual and one was in person. The in-person one was here in CCTA, and the format was that we had a presentation, and for the in-person, we had posters in this room so people can walk around and ask questions. And we also had translators and on board for those who needed, both in the virtual and in-person meetings. So in summary, we did get 82 distinct pieces of communication from the public. Here it shows that 4 out of the 82 were actually asking questions, asking for a specific study or report, which we were able to provide. So it broke down to now down to 78 pieces of correspondences and comment for the project. And out of that 78, 17 didn't really provide any support or opposing any of the alternatives. We kind of categorized them as sort of like an opportunity to either express concerns about other things in transportation system or just venting about express lanes. 32 did come out, specifically opposing to the GP conversion or alternate 5. And then 30 of them were public, and then we had 2 elected letters speaking to the opposition of alternate 5. 19 supported adding capacity to the system to add an express lane, so either 1C, 2, or 3. And then 13 actually said do nothing. And then the comments generally hovered around like traffic congestions, VMT, environmental justice and equity, and then also GHG and air quality. So the way alternatives selection is done in the Caltrans sort of process is that it is a decision process through the project development team. And for this project, the agency represented is CCTA, Caltrans, and MTC. So staff from these 3 agencies sit on the PDT. And for Caltrans, for example, there's different units or departments ranging from like environmental, traffic, biology, so those are represented in the group. So as a whole, we came down to what we call more of a balanced alternative and alternative 2 as our preferred alternative moving forward to be the final preferred alternative in the final environmental document. So these are the criteria that we evaluated through all the studies that we have done. So traffic operations, alternative 2, that is basically reduce the gap with add lane and the braided ramps. So for this alternative 2 is actually the only one that did not affect State Route 24 operations. It also has the safety improvements of braided ramps where some of the alternatives didn't. Also, in terms of design elements, it did not have as many non-standard features as, for example, the southbound realignment, because that requires some tight turns, maybe some reduced shoulder for that to happen. So alternative 2 doesn't have that. It is the lowest cost alternative in the capacity increasing set. So 1C, 2, and 3, alternative 2 is the cheapest one, and less VMT mitigation, which is the other bullets. Yes, I can go back in a second. Yeah, construction impact, it avoids the long-term closure of Olympic southbound off-ramp. So if we did the southbound realignment, that ramp, the southbound ramp, the off-ramp will need to be closed for almost a year for that reconstruction or realignment of 680 southbound. In terms of GHG air quality impact, the alternative is consistent with the RT, the Regional Transportation Plan, and then also because it's less lane add, it has less air quality impact or GHG impact. VMT, again, it is the least amount of VMT across those 3 alternatives, so less mitigation. And then we still are committing to the 20 years of mitigation. And then second to the last one, the public acceptance and community impact, is basically speaking to the comments we received, that there were enough people coming out against such an idea of converting an existing lane that we felt like our community would not be supportive of that idea, at least not for Contra Costa here in this corridor. And then also the stretch that we would be converting lane runs through Concord, and that's a disadvantaged community. Future consideration is speaking to the fact that even though we are not closing the gap completely, this alternative doesn't preclude that from happening in the future if there's funding or if there's a desire to do that in the future. It could be a separate project, and we can study that at that time. In terms of schedule, we've gone to we're at like the last bullet here, I guess, in the top bar. Like I said, we decided at the PDT meeting on September 10th that we have arrived at the preferred alternative of alternative 2, and then we are working towards final project approval. That's sort of Caltrans lingo about accepting the project and completing environmental clearance by June 2025. I think that's my last slide. Yes. You want to go back to the cost? No. Which one? Oh, you want to see all the alternatives? Oh, okay. Oh, you want to, wait, you want a cost? Okay. Yeah, because this one just showed capital costs. It doesn't show the mitigation, but yeah. So alternative 2 is reduce the gap plus braided ramp. So what that is, the pink is going to be left alone. The pink blue area is where would be a lane add. There will be braided ramps around the Lawrence Street Boulevard area. And then north of 242, the dark blue line would be converting the existing HOV to express. So that's alternative 2.
Can you explain what you think the level of service is today and what that alternative 2 would become, if you can?
So, yeah, we haven't been measuring level of service, but we have heat maps. I don't know, I have it in the deck. I don't really want to, I can actually, in the, 1 second.
Well, I'm just after
there
like
is relief of, I think you're trying to understand what the, qualitatively, it does, because of braided ramps, it does reduce a lot of that weaving conflict. So that in itself is huge for the congestion downstream, south of 24, like as people approach the interchange, we won't see as much congestion there. A lot of the bottleneck is caused by that weaving at Lawrence and Street. So separating those two movements would relieve a lot of that bottleneck, and that benefit will be experienced by those driving towards from south to north. When we looked at completing the gap, that actually made it worse. It didn't have as much benefit as actually leaving the gap. It's counterintuitive, but it's essentially the gap helps people gear up for that. Not weaving, but changing the lane if they're going towards 242, towards Concord. The gap will get the express lane people out of the express lane. There is no express lane, so that gap actually provides a distance for them to kind of get themselves in the correct lane that they want to be on the right-hand side. So that eliminates that weaving as well. And then also leaving the gap helps 24 because when those driving on 24 and going eastbound, when they merge on 680, it would be a new express lane on the left-hand side. So it's basically a new lane, and that basically adds capacity. I mean, that's against SB 743, but basically all that together will be beneficial to the entire segment that we're looking at. I don't have like LOS C to D. I don't have that with me, and but the main point is the clear difference between alternative 2 and the others is that because of that gap and the lane add coming from 24 for those driving from 24, the additional lane really does not degrade 24 because the other ones did. due to the lane add. Yeah, so yes, maybe I could, maybe, I know, this is,
Basically, it would be
I
sending
know
more
pictures.
people up 680, and it would basically be a penalty almost to people coming eastbound on 24 wanting to merge north on 680.
yeah, so this is, where's my Zoom panel? Oh, there. Get lost in this. So, I know it's a lot, but it's kind of hard to not look at it, to not look to it when I'm talking about it. So, the red lines are the weaving, denotes weaving, the little red arrows. Can you see? Oh, yeah, you can see my cursor. So what I was saying is, for alternative 2, there's a gap here, so maybe back up. So the dark blue lines here and here means express lanes. So in alternative 2, there's nothing happening here like it is today. So we basically extend the existing express lane from Navorna up to maybe South Main, and then it stops. And then it's kind of like today, it just kind of opens up, people can get in. What I was trying to say is for 24, those coming on eastbound, merging on 680, when they're driving on the inside lane, a new lane just pops out, it just appears. That would be the new express lane. So it doesn't really add any burden to them, they're just continue to drive. If they don't want to get an express lane, they just keep going. If they do want to get into express lane, they go to the left lane. But these other alternatives, so basically 1C and 3, they're coming in here, but then they cannot get into the express lane. And then all of a sudden, they just, if they want to get in, they can't. So this option actually helps. This was the only alternative that doesn't impact 24. That's what I was trying to say. So yeah, what I was trying to, yeah, so the gap that I was speaking of, like here, meaning this gap being reduced, but still a gap, gives them the opportunity to look ahead. You know, if I'm driving here and I'm in the express lanes, for example, I'm out of it now. So it gives me some chance if I'm going to 242, which a lot more than not, people are going towards 242 and Highway 4. So for them to have this distance to kind of but make their lane choices to go to the right in anticipation of exiting at 24. That gap helps that sort of decision time, I guess. Versus if you're in the express lane here, you're basically not trapped, but you're in a barrier protected express lane. So when it kind of does this, they're going on the other side of 24. That's what the realignment we talked about last time.
You're trapped.
You're trapped essentially until like here. And then you're also then try to make yourself go to the right side to get off to 24. So this sort of thing is basically degrading 24 because then it creates another sort of backup here now with that scenario. So they are the. Yeah, so the yellow is basically widening. So here for alternative 2, in order to do this lane add, we need to widen to the outside to maintain that number of lanes because we're not converting, right? So alternative 5, there's no yellow because we're just taking the inside. So this yellow here is denoting that there's some widening, air quotes, because of the braided ramps. So this is what this symbol means. So Treat Boulevard is going to go above Lawrence. So then this conflict is gone. Whereas here on alternative 1, where we're not proposing braided ramps, that existing conflict in gray means existing. This conflict remains. So I'm trying to circle it on big movements. So this Alternative 1C did not propose a braided ramp, so that in itself, it doesn't perform as well as Alternative 2. Because this is the braided ramp is much, much needed, actually, in terms of operation. Alternative 3 has both, but then what I was talking about here, those who are like kind of trapped in the express lane don't get to get out until here, and then they have to weave over to 242. That in itself adds problems. So then it boiled down to Alternative 2, Alternative 5. But then Alternative 5 also, in the opening year, seems to be okay, but as demand goes up, as more homes get built in sort of the Concord area, then losing this lane actually will be in some future, we don't know when, it will then start becoming a problem for 24.
Yeah, so while we're kind of being spontaneous here, the simple way I'm looking at it is I count 2 braidings in Alternative 2, and all the other alternatives have 3 or 4.
Oh, you're talking about the weaving movements?
Weavings,
Yeah.
the weavings or redeployments of lane choices because people are going to all different places. So 2 actually has the least number of lane choices happening in that general space.
Correct.
So that's a real advantage. Okay, that's helpful. Maybe you want to jump back in?
I just have, one comment, just kind of for the record. So I think the weave is massive, like you guys are saying. So I think this is a good I think a pretty good choice from what I understand. My only concern is I suspect it helps 24 a bunch and it clears out, this section through here well because of the braiding. The challenge is what happens to the people coming north on 680 from, Dublin and San Ramon. I would think there's some improvement for them if you can get more flow further up. But I would think that's where some of the objections will be or complaints afterwards, because I think they're certainly not getting the throughput that, if you'd created a lane all the way through. But I think it's interesting. When's it happening?
Well, yeah, we actually got.
What about, have you gone through the Caltrans process?
We haven't gone through the Caltrans process. So the good news is everyone agreed. We got consensus. The Alternative 2 is the preferred alternative. So that in itself was huge. I think we all have different sort of priorities or just different interests, but I think everyone agreed this was a balanced alternative. There's VMT induced, which is a bummer. The express lane isn't completely, the gap isn't completely closed, but we think there is a lot of benefit to this alternative. In terms of next steps, we complete the environmental document in June 2025. That's what we're hoping for. And then securing funding, hopefully for our first phase of the project. And we've sort of the first phase is basically everything north of 24. It's a good break here. So starting from here to the right.
I apologize, but I'm trying to visualize what the braided is going to look like.
Yeah, I have a picture.
I was so hopeful you would. Thank you.
Yeah, no. That's why I have it, but I need to unhide it.
In a few short words, grade separates the 2 ramps, so the off-ramp and the on-ramp don't touch each other. They cross over and under each other, but
Yeah.
Stephanie's got a good.
Right, I just
Yeah,
wondered,
I'm trying
which
to-
one's at elevation and what the sort of look of it is.
So
Yeah.
if I can get there, let's see. Sorry, I'm gonna otherwise I'm gonna toggle a bunch of slides.
And while she's looking up that, Matt, we learned previously, those exits that she's talking about braiding and widening, isn't that a lot of the traffic flow off of 24 and the 680 backs up, more related to those exits, right? I think that's what you've educated me.
The current congestion you see there on a daily basis starts right here at the weave between Lawrence and Treat and goes back, towards 24 and then in both directions.
Yeah, I just drove that today coming here.
Yeah, yes. There it is.
So, yeah, here it is in like stick figures. So Treat goes above Lawrence. This thing doesn't work, okay.
Okay.
So this is the existing condition. Basically, Treat mixes with Lawrence Way coming on mixes with those wanting to get off at the Treat Boulevard, and that's our office, right? That's how you would get to us, going northbound. This is a simulation. So basically, those that want to exit on North Main will go on the loop ramp like they do today, but those who want to exit on Treat will also take this ramp with the North Main people. So they don't go to the loop, but they go straight, and it goes above this Lawrence on. I think it's a video.
That really helps.
Yeah, there you go. So that's a bridge, and that's Lawrence going underneath the bridge. So then the Lawrence people and the Treat people don't mix anymore.
I had a question about alternative 3. I still want to fight for it. So when you're on the express lane going northbound, for the people who want to exit, they stay on the express lane on the freeway, just like they do today. They merge in. The people who want to continue on the freeway take that off ramp and stay on the express lane. So does an alternative 3 give you that option? Kind of like the 237?
237. Not familiar. 1 second. Let me, if I can. What I was trying to say is that maybe I'm not understanding, but
I think
we. I'm trying to find the map.
I understand alternative 3 is a problem because you're creating problems down the road for people who want to exit. They don't have the time to exit if they want to, take exits. But the way I like express lanes is if I'm staying on the freeway, I stay on the express lane and I get off and, I go fast.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm on the express lane and I want to exit, you kind of just stay there and then you exit.
Yeah.
I think you're asking, do the express lanes have dedicated ramps connecting you? So that's a
yeah.
freeway to freeway connection down at 237 and 680. And so we don't have any dedicated ramps as part of this express lane. It's strictly express lanes within the median, nothing that gets you out of the median, like a flyover that would get you out of the median onto a different facility.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What do we have to do to put that as a future project?
Well, we don't have any connecting freeways with
yeah.
HOV or express lanes. So 24 doesn't have HOV or express, neither does 242. And Highway 4 doesn't yet connect to 680. So at the 684 interchange, ultimately there is a plan for an HOV to HOV connector there from Highway 4 westbound to 680 southbound. So if you're coming from like Antioch, you could take right now it's HOV lane, but HOV lane all the way down. You'd pass 242 if you wanted to stay in the express lane or HOV lane, and then there would be a dedicated flyover ramp to get you into the 680 express lane at Highway 4. So that would be the only example of one of those probably in the 680 system, though maybe in the future you'll see something down at 580.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, but I think in our travel analysis that there's still benefits to the managed lane users, even though the gap is reduced, not totally closed, because you do get a little farther. I was going to show you this, but yeah, there are still benefits to the managed lanes for the alternative that's not completely enclosing the gap. So the left-hand side is doing nothing, like no build. So, yes, for sure, obviously, if we close the gap, there's more benefits to those that closest the gap, like no gap, right, for the express lane users. But comparing to what we have today, there is still some savings. So this is going from Navorna to Waterfront. You know, there is still savings, like, you know, right, 22 minutes versus 14, let's say 15 minutes. So reducing the gap does have benefit to the managed lane users. So again, it was sort of, you know, the balanced approach, you know, everyone, we can confidently say that all users will have benefit to this project and the alternative chosen. Yeah.
So roughly 80% of the benefit if you say 22 minus 14 versus 22 minus 12.
Yeah, right. So, and that's what we hope to do, right? Like any project that would be most benefit to more people, maximum amount of people. So, anyway, yeah.
Clearly
That
lots of
helps.
energy from the folks who live near the 680 on this.
Yeah.
Maybe we take the opportunity just to make sure everyone who might have questions has a chance to field them. Maybe we start with someone who's not as close to the 680 with Dennis and work ourselves around to Matt.
Okay. So my question, it's off topic. I mean, not really off topic, but different from what we're discussing regarding the braided lanes. It's more on the financial end. So I guess I'm curious to understand if you've all kind of modeled or projected what the long-term financial implications of maintaining the express lane will be, like after it's complete.
The maintenance cost of express lanes,
Going
that's
forward.
MTC question. Maybe you can table that for Barbara. Lawrence. Yeah, so just to clarify, CCTA doesn't operate the express lane once complete.
Okay.
So we've constructed the southbound lanes, but once we've done it, like once we've constructed all the civil components, we hand it off to MTC, who is the operator of the lanes, and they actually take care of all the system integration and the sign, the gantries, pricing the lanes. That's MTC and not CCTA. But that's a good question for MTC.
Do they also take care of like performance measure? I mean,
Yeah, so
we
they
see them-
do. Yeah, they are, I think, mandated to do some reporting out of financials. And on their website, it shows like revenue and how much they cost in terms of operating them, and the net revenue and so it's available online if that's something you're interested in, and maybe we can relay it to the MTC staff when they come back.
Yeah, every few years, we invite the person at MTC who's in charge of the express lanes to come in and give this group an express lanes report. So we'll probably due for that in the next year or so, so we can invite her in and get those types of questions answered. But it is available on their website.
Thank you.
Member Wayne? Member Banger?
Just quickly, a snarky comment. It'd be wonderful if we could get the MTC listed on Charity Navigator regarding the express lanes to see that a certain percentage of the monies that are going there are going for the direct benefit of the users. That's all.
Going back to, because you had a couple of slides in the budget, how much money is this project short of the funding that it's needed? If it's $100 million, which you had put up there, or whatever it was, 150. 170. How much? 170-ish. Thank you, Ed. How short are we from having the 170 in the bank to use to do this?
It's 170
think
plus
we can
mitigation.
share, it's part of the mitigation that's challenging. So, yes, and yeah, it's also not just the rolling stock or even the capital cost, it's the ongoing maintenance of the buses, for example, the ongoing operating, the bus drivers that operate the buses, and then any services that we provide at the mobility hubs that will actually be the driver of reducing VMT. Like just having a hub there it's just a physical thing, like having mobility options, having bike share, or having people charge their e-bikes so they would ride their bikes. Those things cost money to kind of operate and maintain for the 20 years that we've committed. So that's the more challenging piece, in my opinion. We've been successful in getting capital money through grants and whatnot, so I think we can get there. It's more the 20 years of commitment of VMT that it's a challenge to get to. And a lot of the grants are not like, you can use it for 20 years. It's like a one-time, so here's a chunk of money to construct something. So those fund sources, those steady stream or sustainable stream of funding for operations and maintenance is the challenge, I think.
So as a follow-up to that, for VMT though, wouldn't by mitigating the amount of idling time on 24 in particular also, because if you're speeding up those exits the way you are, what you didn't have is how much faster 24 is going to flow and 680 is going to flow. That will then reduce emissions, but I'm not the genius, so I defer to you and Matt.
Matt can take that one.
Yeah, sorry. So it's brilliant, but that's greenhouse gas and not VMT. That does not change your trip length.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
Yeah, and they're tying VMT with GHG these
Yeah,
days.
but that does affect, that affects idling and GHG, just does not affect, VMT is all about trip length and the amount you're driving.
Right.
And, which is why we can't apply electric vehicle, strategies as VMT reductions, because that doesn't change your trip length, it only affects the amount of emissions you're kicking out, so.
Okay, and then I'll shut up. But this is freaking awesome for those of us who are on 24 and that 680 corridor. Like, yay, let's get this done tomorrow. Like, this is a big relief to this central part of the county with all the assets to it. I mean, yeah, so awesome work.
Let's circle back. Rosa, did you have any further questions? Okay, as you wish.
I'd just like to know if that information that you were showing us, is that made public, and where can we find that? You were showing us some of the
the slides? Yeah, we
costs
can make
and the
that
diagrams.
yeah, we can, yes, the presentation can be made public.
Sure.
Were you referring to some of the slides that Stephanie pulled up kind of
Yeah.
off the cuff?
Yeah, those are, I think I presented that to the PAC already, so it had been public. I just shortened our conversation because I thought you wanted to just know. Yeah, but I'm happy we went through it. Those were my backup slides, so, yeah, I can take some of those out and put it in a deck, on a PDF for you guys to just.
I guess I was more so saying like the general public. Is there a place that the general public can go to get this sort of information?
Yeah, I think we had these slides during our public meeting, so I believe yeah, let me double check, but if it's not there, we can have that available.
There's a project website.
There's a project website where we provided a bunch of presentations and prior engagement with the public, so it should be there. If not, we can make sure that it is.
Thank you for your project. I did experience that today, so it will improve getting to the CCTA meeting, so thank you. My question was about public comment. Can we include the San Francisco Chronicle in seeking feedback on all CCTA projects?
In the future, I can talk to our external affairs director to see how that can be done. Yeah, we focused on people in the county, so yeah, East Bay Times, the El Salvador, I'm saying it wrong, but it's basically the foreign language ones. But if there's a desire to think, if we, San Francisco Chronicle is one that you guys feel is appropriate, we can look into it.
And then I don't know if just in general, if I subscribe to the CCTA news, do I get alerts about feedback for projects? And I'm referring to the public, like if I tell my neighbor, get on the alert so you can submit feedback.
For like specific, for like this type of formal comment period type things? Yeah, I know Lindy did a lot of social media. She did Facebook, LinkedIn, email blasts. I think she did a good job like spreading the word. And our electeds too, like we wanted the electeds, like you, like leverage their own newsletters, leverage their own kind of communication avenues so that we were highlighted, but.
And I will say, Member Escobar, that most of the outreach was focused within the corridor. So, a lot of the cities were putting out information. So if you didn't happen to be living in one of the, 5 cities or 7 cities along the corridor, you may not have heard about it. Hopefully the people along the corridor did.
Yeah, and we did get some comments for those that, I don't know where they live, but, I think on the form you have to put your zip code. I think there were a couple of people that drive the corridor that don't live on the corridor. So, and I know MTC also did a plug on their social media as well, and they have a wider reach than we do, being the regional entity. So, it was out there, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering if you could pull up that slide with the diagrams of the different options.
The one with the weaving?
Yes, actually my question relates to weaving.
Okay, hold on.
I'm a visual person, so.
I need to take it down in order to. It's challenging my tech skills. This one?
Yes, that's the one. So for context, I live near the Monument Boulevard ramp, and right now, if I wanted to go visit Keith over in Martinez, as soon as I get onto the freeway, I have to immediately merge 3 lanes
To the left.
get on, to get on 680 North.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, it looks like with alternative 2, that would not happen. Is that correct? Or is that weaving still going to happen regardless?
You still need to go to the left, yes. So you are doing the weaving. But there should be less conflict in this scenario versus if we had chosen like 1C or 3. Because then you're trying to fight against the others that are coming out of the express lane. So you won't have, not that you won't have it, but you have less of this and this. Yeah.
But there's no improvement at the on-ramp.
There's no
from
improvement
Monument.
There's no improvement on the ramp you're getting on the freeway. But I'm saying there's benefits of having the braided ramps and having how the express lane is, new express lane is situated. You should have less weaving from those upstream of you. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And there will be more capacity at that location
one
because of
extra lane.
the added lane. So,
It's something, better than nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will just put a push to maybe improve that in the future, way down the line. But also, I guess, in terms of the timeline, you said this is kind of like is it a 20-year project? Or?
No, the mitigation is 20 years, yeah. Not that it will take 20 years to build. We committed 20 years of VMT mitigation, those strategies of express bus, mobility hubs, and TDM programs. We committed to doing those things for 20 years to offset the VMT induced by alternative 2. But we're hoping not 20 years to construct this, hopefully in 5-6 years.
Okay, great, thank you.
At least the first phase.
So I have one quick question, if you have the answers. So there were 13 people that kind of figured they wanted the no build. And so other than they just don't want to spend any money, what are the reasons that they gave? Do you know that, or is that something I can see?
I'm going off my head, I don't know. Like someone said like enough or, yeah, we're scared, yeah, our PM consultant. Money, and also there's just been a lot of construction on the corridor. I can't think of any, I mean, just kind of
Okay,
like
that's
stop it with the
fine.
express lane already. Like some people just also don't like express lanes. So not that they don't want anything done, they just don't want any more express lanes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I read like, I don't even like the existing express lane. Why are you building more? So we kind of categorize that as no, don't do anything or no build. Because there are people who think of express lanes as Lexus lanes and
Yeah.
why, oh yeah, like, I already pay for this through my taxes. Why are you charging me to build, why are you charging me to use a lane? Like, no more of this. So we kind of characterize those kind of sentiment to do
Okay,
nothing.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank
Yeah.
you. It took me a moment to jog my memory.
I was just thinking of the standard pushback in the, like, the Dallas area or Houston, where there were, successful challenges to these because there's a state law that says you can't pay taxes twice for some facility or whatever, and so a planned express lane had to be removed because it was considered double taxation.
Double taxing, yeah.
Right.
Can I ask a follow-up? Like, what would your response be to that kind of argument?
So during the public meeting, when we were prepping, we basically can say everybody will benefit, not everybody, most users will benefit from the project. If you don't pay to get in the lane, you're getting some benefit by those who are using the lane because they're freeing up space on the free lanes. Those who are paying is freeing up that spot for you who are not paying. So there's, as a whole, there's a range of benefits to, some benefits to everyone on all the users here. Transit as well, if they take the express lanes, they can get to their stops faster. So that's our answer, or at least how MTC answers it in terms of defending express lane,
And
the
option-
network.
And option two, interestingly, if you look at that one chart that you had, offers the smallest, I'm choosing a loaded word here, I apologize. It offers the lowest penalty to a differential penalty between the express lane user versus the common user. I mean, there's only a 1.8 minute additional difference between them. So I was looking at, the different options or whatever, and that offered the narrowest gap between
the delta,
the
yeah.
two. So that's kind of a strong argument for it to say, hey, even if you're not paying to be in the express lane, it's only 1.8 minutes longer for you, and that's like 4 to 6 minutes less than you were doing before. So, yeah.
I understood those numbers to be, for a general user, you're going from 22 minutes down to 14 minutes. So it's definitely a gain, not a penalty to the general users. Yeah, just want to be clear that for the public.
I'm sorry.
Alternative two actually gave the best savings to the general public, to non-express
Oh, yes,
users.
but then there were still benefits to the main, managed lane.
To the managed
Yes, correct.
Stephanie, I had a question about the mobility hubs. I was remembering a presentation way back when, and I think that you outlined where those mobility hubs were going to be. Could you refresh our memories?
Yeah, so it supports the express bus service, the hydrogen fuel one, and it's between Dublin, Pleasanton BART station to the Amtrak station in Martinez, and there will only be 3 stops along the way, and that's where the mobility hubs are going to be. So it's at Bishop Ranch, Walnut Creek BART station, and then Martinez Amtrak station. So we had a small grant from MTC to do the mobility hubs at Martinez, but it's a very small phase, mainly do a lot of wayfinding, some bike ped improvements for better connection through that area. And then we got a state grant for the one in Bishop Ranch as well. So, and that's for capital.
Gotcha. And I just want to say congratulations. You put a lot of study into this, and it looks like the best option won this time, and that's not always the case.
Yeah,
So
I think everyone, lots of work from Matt and our consultants. It was a long process.
Yeah, I really
thanks for your
see a big
feedback and
benefit. Yeah, I really see a big benefit for everybody using this corridor.
Yeah, lots of great questions from everyone. The enthusiasm was palpable. So I see the 4 varies being justified. Just a couple of things. I actually took Lawrence on-ramp, and then the braiding worked in my favor because I came straight off, which I won't have to do that in the future with the braided ramp. I can just stay on the 680 coming from the south. What about the way station? Does it really feature in any of this at all? Because you have to maybe drop those trailers down to that way station?
No,
that I
yeah,
guess
so
stays there?
No, we conform, basically, we don't touch the way station by much. Like, we're not, at one point, so we met with CHP and Caltrans, who, they operate that station. And so we're not affecting it really by much. I mean, I don't think we're touching it at all at this point. And the existing condition is that they close the way station at like 3 p.m., from my understanding and meeting with them, because there's just too much congestion. Basically, the trucks don't stop there after 2 p.m. So maybe now they can, I don't know, with less congestion. But yeah, not negatively impacting the way station at all.
And then I'll close with the question, it's not over till the fat lady sings, as they say. Is there anything between this very, 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 very good agenda item outcome and something causing it to come off the rails at the very end? Is there anything out there lurking that could be a fly in the ointment?
I don't think so. I mean, there's still lots of boxes to check off. Like, we need to, like I said, complete the final environmental document. We need to engage Caltrans headquarters again about our VMT mitigation. We do need to have our mitigation measure commitments sort of written down in our document and our measures kind of defined. Other than that, I can't anticipate. I mean, yeah, probably.
Chair,
I
can I
can't
ask
think
one
of
last
anything.
question?
Certainly.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think one of the things that came up as we were talking about this in the timelines, assuming that there was approval for the environmental impact in June next year, obviously this is just asking you to guess. What would be your expectation in terms of breaking ground on the overpass for the exit at Taylor?
Overpass at Taylor?
Treat.
The braided
Treat.
ramps?
Taylor.
Oh, sorry, I got confused.
Thank you. You knew what I meant.
Yeah, I thought I did. Yeah, no, yes, I did. So we're confident we'll be able to start design right after environmental clearance. We have some money to start PS&E actually for first phase. So first phase, I was saying, is everything north of 24. Break ground or break ground around 2028 or 29. It takes, I don't know, 2-3 years. So hopefully before this decade's done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We just wanted that realistic kind of expectation.
Yeah, can we share about Mega? I don't know.
Yeah, before we go any further, I just want to say, we haven't gotten to the 4 varies yet, so I'd really like to let Stephanie share the great news.
I'm not sure if I can.
Too late now.
Isn't it?
He's already set the stage.
So, yeah, we got word that we got some grant funding for this project, because our executive director kind of alluded to it at the board meeting, so I'm kind of doing
It's in the news.
It's in the news that we got money for this project, and we do have monies to do a first phase. So again, north of...
Including the braided ramps.
Including the braided ramps. So yeah, we're excited. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's good. It's a good problem to have.
When I asked my budget question, that would have been a good time to share.
Well, I wasn't sure where you already knew it. You could have said, I read in the news.
No, I thought someone else was going to say
Then I
it.
couldn't be like, well, Jared said it, not me. Yes, we're excited, and we're still working out all the details. So, yeah, much needed improvement on this corridor.
And I just want to say, Stephanie led the grant application, and it's a very healthy grant for Contra Costa County, like bigger than anyone else received. So it's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah,
Kudos to
it was a village, so not just me, but yeah, thank you.
I'm just going to say it. It's $166 million.
Wow, you're going to be my second favorite CCTA staff person with this project. And Matt wasn't first, so.
I was going to say.
I was gonna say, what happened? Anyway, well, thank you for all your comments and just your attention and your interests. I can tell you guys are very invested in all your questions and happy to hear all of them and hope I answer them well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stephanie. Let's just be sure, did we get any written public comments on this item, Emily?
We have not received any public comments, and there are still no public online.
Gotcha, thank you. On that basis, let's stop there on a really positive note and let the next item be presented by Matt Kelly on the Biannual Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist Tutorial, to remind us how we can do this best.
Give me a second here to get fully set up. I'm going to share my screen. And it's right. Wait, it closed. Give me one more second now. And there it is. And I'll turn on the camera. There we go, and one more thing. Get this full screen. Oh, yeah. Okay. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Matt Kelly once again. So, as you know, one of the major roles of this committee is to review and make a recommendation on the Measure J Growth Management Program compliance checklists. We have just kicked off a new season of checklists, and I'll talk about what season that is and what that means. Some of you are new, and I don't think I've ever seen a checklist in real life. It's the mythical beast that lives somewhere up in, Trinity County. No, it's the checklist. We get 20 of them every 2 years, and I'll get into the importance of them in my presentation, but this is, a very important role for this committee, so we want to make sure you have the tools you need to successfully review these checklists, and, that you are not just, a rubber stamp, that you can, take a look at these checklists and ask good questions about whether the cities are doing what they are supposed to be doing. So first, let's talk about the growth management program. It was established under both Measure C and Measure J. It changed a little between the two, but it was definitely strengthened under Measure J. The goal is to assure that new development, new land use projects pay for the facilities required to meet the demands resulting from the growth that those developments bring on in our communities. So it requires that the local jurisdictions are working together when making decisions, and we call these it's the transportation land use interactions, that they're taking into account the transportation system when making land use decisions. To support land use patterns that basically make use of the existing infrastructure, and especially transportation infrastructure, so that when new development occurs, you're not having to build new streets, extend bus lines, things like that, but also consistent with the general plans that have been adopted in our local jurisdictions. And then to support infill and redevelopment in our existing areas, as opposed to building out in greenfields and keeping that new development as compact as possible. So the The compliance checklist is the mechanism for, the jurisdictions demonstrating their compliance with the GMP. And so there's 13 questions that they are required to answer to demonstrate that compliance. It must be submitted by June 30th every other year, so the odd year. So the next deadline for all 20 checklists is June 30th, 2025. This checklist cycle or season is for the calendar year 2022 and 2023 checklist. That means when you see a checklist and when the cities come in here to present, they are reporting on a specific time period, that being calendar years 2022 and 2023. So, basically they have to be reporting on, years in arrears, so they're not prognosticating there. So everybody wonders why there's a delay. It's really so they can be reporting on what they've done and have kind of a summary of that. And so once that checklist is approved every 2 years, that releases their local streets and roads funds, LSM funds, for 2 fiscal years. So one checklist gets you 2 years of funds release. In this case, 23-24 and 24-25. For 23-24, that money is available. There's 23.5 million. So as a reminder, 18% of Measure J, plus in certain parts of the counties, there's an additional 2%. So in some cases, 20% of Measure J goes back to the local jurisdictions in the form of these LSM funds. And you are the bodies that make recommendations for that funding to be returned to the cities. So it's really important. This is why the cities are, participate in CCTA and Measure J and the Growth Management Program. This is why Measure J was passed because of the Growth Management Program and this return to source. So it's very important. And you all receive a presentation from local staff. You determine that they are compliant with the GMP and recommend approval and allocation of those funds.
Matt?
Yes.
One question for you on that previous slide. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the timing. Authority approval 22-23 releases funds for fiscal year 23-24, 24-25. Even that almost sounds like those funds release are in arrears if they're not providing the checklists until 2025. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around just exactly how all that's working.
Yeah, so, the fiscal year 23-24 funds are, based on sales tax revenues that we receive from the state based on money spent here. We don't know what 23-24 funds are going to be until September 1st of 24. So basically, if someone submits a checklist now, they get their 23-24 funds. We don't know what 24-25 funds are. They get those funds a year to the date from the date they got their 23-24 funds. So some people can be getting those as soon as they're available if they've submitted their checklist early. If they submit their checklist late, then for sure they're getting it in arrears.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's
We had
confusing.
several last year. The last cycle, we had several coming in tail
Yeah,
end.
so I had to explain this to all the West County jurisdictions the other day. I did a tutorial for them on filling out the checklist and submitting it. And there were a lot of jurisdictions over there who submitted their checklist very late and got a very late initial allocation. If they submit their new checklist early, they could get their 23-24 funds before they get their 22-23 funds. That's just how kind of crazy this all can be if you're submitting your checklist late. If you submit it early and on time every year, then you can get a consistent check on time So I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did. Fiscal year 23-24 refers to the quantification of the funds, not when the funds land in the jurisdiction to be
Essentially
spent.
where they were
Correct.
collected, yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And, you know, it's very confusing for the financial folks at the cities because they, you know, we let them know what funds are available for 23, 24, and they kind of budget that in. They may not get it for another year. And so they're like, you know, I go talk to your planners, have them submit the checklist, and all that's fixed. And, you know, you guys could also, you know, contact staff and encourage them to submit early. Anything to get them to submit early helps us all.
I got the message, but is the allocation based on the sales tax for that city?
No, oh, good question.
Yeah.
So the 18% is allocated to the 20 jurisdictions using a formula combining road mileage in the community and the population. So, yeah, it can change every year very slightly if like the population grows or if they build a bunch of new roads, but, you know, yeah. So we're going to go through the items.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
Because, well, actually, I heard it was different, though. I don't know. I was under the assumption it was based on the maintenance costs when the program started.
That's item 11 on the checklist. So that's
Okay.
MOE, maintenance of effort.
Oh, okay.
So we
All
will,
right.
good
All right.
memory though. We will get to that in a moment.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good point. So we'll go through the 12 items kind of one by one. I'll spend more time on the ones I think deserve more time but feel free to ask questions. So checklist item 1, in my mind, this is one of the more important questions and one that the cities should, what I told the cities on Tuesday is that they should be spending more time on. So we have these action plans for routes of regional significance. These are really one of the main ways the growth management program plays out locally. So the action plans apply performance measures to major arterials, to transit lines, and to trails. And we apply, these performance measures that are applied to them are called MTSOs, Multimodal Transportation Service Objectives. Those could be like level of service at an intersection, which is more traditional one, or it could be like how long does a bicycle rider have to wait at a crossing of the Iron Horse Trail, or how often are buses arriving on San Pablo Avenue, something like that. So then new developments, new land use projects must mitigate negative impacts to those MTSOs. So anytime there's a new development that triggers a certain number of new trips, they must analyze that development's impacts on the MTSOs. So that's that land use transportation interaction that's going on there. It requires neighboring jurisdictions to work together when planning for growth, so they're working together to develop the action plans and to share information about their developments to the downstream communities, so it protects those downstream communities from what's going on. You know, if Clayton were to build, 10,000 new homes, how would that impact, Concord and Walnut Creek? And there's 5 action plans updated around the county every about 5 years. So when you get a checklist in the packet, what you're going to be looking for is a list of implementation actions that the jurisdiction has taken to implement their local action plan. So, there's a list of actions in each action plan. It could be, construct a flashing crosswalk at all intersections of the Iron Horse Trail. It could be put in, bus stops at all, at the busiest bus stops in town. It could be a number of things. They aren't required to implement all these actions in a certain amount of time, but they are required to make progress towards implementation. So you want to see that they are planning, you know, for that flashing light intersection at the Iron Horse Trails. They are planning for, you know, new bike routes serving a new development, things like that. Have they, so that's the bulk of that item. You're going to see a list of these implementation steps. They have to indicate whether they've circulated environmental documents to their neighboring jurisdictions, especially downstream. Have they analyzed the impacts of general plan amendments? They have to provide a list of those general plan amendments. So specifically name the amendment. Did they approve new projects consistent with, you know, what's in the action plan? Provide us a list of projects. And then for both of those, did they follow the review procedures outlined by CCTA? And we have a document called Technical Procedures that outlines how all of this is to be done, because generally this is being done by consultants on behalf of a developer or on behalf of a city.
Matt, as that all seems very pragmatic. As Sacramento keeps doing anything it feels it can to force new housing, is there any point at which these requirements are going to go at loggerheads with what Sacramento is trying to impose upon the towns in terms of the thousands of additional housing units that are required? Is there any conflict here, or is it the process can still be respected without Sacramento being upset with?
So I'll get into part of that under item 3. That's the housing item. But as far as transportation goes, we did update the growth management program back in 2021 to reflect the change to VMT under SB 743. So a lot of those traffic impact analysis procedures that are called for here now, the methodology that we provide in our document, Technical Procedures, it's a very plain name for a document, Technical Procedures. But when I say that, that's what I'm referring to. It's a document that spells out all these methodologies for doing these documents, because under the growth management program, everyone is required to analyze those impacts the same way around the county. So that's why we have this document that spells out how to do that. So there's no questions. Consultants know what they're doing. The cities know what's going on. There's no surprises. So yeah, so if policies change in Sacramento, we do, where we need to, we try and make spot updates to the growth management program. So I'll move on. Like I said, just interrupt me if you want me to stop and answer a question. Item 2 is called the Development Mitigation Program. So we do a lot of mitigation around here. You just heard Stephanie talking about it. So, but a big part of the growth management program is mitigating the impacts from development. So every jurisdiction under Measure J is required to have a local fee program to mitigate the impacts of development. And when I say a fee program, what a fee program is essentially is for each, say, type of development, like residential, commercial, hotels, things like that, gas stations, that there is a fee associated with that development, generally based on the number of trips that they generate, that goes towards mitigating the impacts. So each city has a fee program for each type of land use. They are required to do so and to apply those to new development. Each sub-regional area in the county, so west, central, east, and southwest, is required to have a regional fee. So each city is required, you know, when a development goes on in Walnut Creek, that development is required to pay into the Walnut Creek fee as well as the Central County fee. So the local fee is intended to address local impacts, and the regional fee is intended to address more regional impacts. So it's something kind of unique for Contra Costa. And when you get the checklist, unfortunately, we don't ask for a copy of everything. We just ask them yes, no. Have they adopted and are they participating in a local and regional fee program? So, it's something we probably should be asking for them to actually submit the program. But really, in what you're going to see in the checklist is just, are they participating? And it's generally because the program doesn't change much each year. Item 3, housing options. So really, we're looking at kind of the housing opportunities that are being provided locally. The Growth Management Program says that jurisdictions should be providing housing opportunities at all income levels, and they should be adopting standards into their kind of development approval process and review process that ensure that those developments are considering, all modes, walking, biking, and transit into their developments as part of the city's review process. So when we ask them to, demonstrate their compliance there, we are not asking them to go above and beyond anything that they really are doing for the state in terms of their RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which I think is what the chair was referring to. Every 8 years, each jurisdiction has a goal of the amount of units for each affordability level that they are required to zone for, not necessarily construct, but to zone for. And so all we ask the cities to do is to submit their annual reports, their housing progress reports that they are already submitting to the state housing and community development department for those 2 calendar years. So if they are consistent with HCD rules, we are not asking for anything more than that. We just want to see what the progress that is being made. But beyond that, so that's what you're going to see in the checklist. The other attachment you're going to see is a list of policies from their general plan, generally their circulation element, that lists what they require as part of their development review and approval process, to make sure that developments are incorporating, facilities for biking, pedestrians, and accessing transit. So that's what we do require above and beyond what they would normally be doing. So that's what you will see in your checklist. And I included a screenshot of one of the summary tables. So there's several tables in those progress reports, but basically they summarize the number of units, the number of permits issued for housing at each level. So, the very low, low, moderate, and above moderate, kind of the market rate units. So it's a very interesting way to figure out what is going on in each jurisdiction. So I find that a very interesting part of each submittal, and I think that always generates a lot of questions from you guys. So I think looking at those housing progress reports is very important, and feel free to question the jurisdictions on their housing production, what they're doing to encourage it, what they're doing regarding affordable housing, what they're doing regarding ADUs, whether they've seen the streamlining process for ADUs actually result in more ADUs. So what I'm telling you guys is feel free, if you see something that looks odd in a checklist, feel free to reach out to me. But when the cities come in front of you, feel free to question them about any of the information you see.
Having said that,
Yeah.
Matt, what you sort of described there would kind of be a stretch for us to not approve a checklist on the basis of item 3 contents.
That's kind of what I'm getting at,
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So on that too, does builder's remedy, they still have to comply with this requirement, right?
Yes, they still have to be compliant with HCD and doing that zoning for the, the all levels of income. The builder's remedy just is on more about the approval.
Right, okay. And then so just based on Michael's question, can we ask these cities what they've done, like in submitting their work prior to coming to us, what they've done to rezone? Because one of the big issues with HCD is, yes, everybody submitted a plan, but unless you rezone and allow this stuff, then nothing actually happens, right? So can we ask them to submit, hey, what did you rezone to comply with your program as part of that?
We could start asking. It might be a little late now because we've published all of the materials, instructions and so forth.
Typically, the presentations that we've seen, they just freely offered that.
Yeah.
When they share what the projects were, they talked about, what had to be
Right.
rezoned to allow for the project to be approved.
Right. I think they did get a lot of questions about the process that they had to go through to do the zoning to meet the RENA allocations, and that's probably fresh
In
for a lot of
fact,
them.
in the few cases where they didn't actually come forth with it, questions were raised by the committee.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. Feel free to question that if they don't mention it in their presentations. Okay, I'll move on to item 4, traffic impact studies. So, as I mentioned, basically if projects meet a certain threshold, and generally countywide, that is 100 net new peak hour trips. So we only want to know what the project is doing above and beyond existing. We're not trying to penalize them for what's already occurring. So generally, 100 net new peak hour trips. It can be different in other parts of the counties. In the county, in Southwest County, it's 50. La Miranda, it's 50. I'll focus on 100. That can be, maybe a medium-sized apartment complex, probably maybe over 100 units, 150 units, maybe that might trigger, a medium-sized shopping center might generate that. A hotel, a good-sized hotel. So, a 30-unit apartment complex is probably not going to generate this. They'll still be doing a traffic study locally, but not under our rules. And then it says, they must use our technical procedures and our travel demand forecasting model to determine the impacts to the system and the action plan objectives. So what you're going to see in the checklist is a list of the projects that met that threshold and for which impact studies were prepared. And then we also want to know that those projects, those impact reports were circulated to the neighboring jurisdictions. So they need to indicate, basically they just need to tell us that the circulation was done according to, technical procedures. And basically that says they need to circulate to any downstream neighbor or anyone affected by the project and allow for comment. So item 5, participation in cooperative multi-jurisdictional planning. This is that sub-regional planning, developing of the action plans, where jurisdictions are talking to each other. This is the former chair's favorite question to ask. Are you talking to your neighbors? Technically they're required to do so, but it doesn't always happen in reality. You guys know that. So actually questioning them on it, because sometimes, they'll be going to these RTPC meetings and they may not even know why they're there, So I think it's a really good question because cooperative multi-jurisdictional planning is one of the major components of the growth management program. This, it's weird to think about, but this does not go on in other counties. They're not required to be consulting with their neighboring jurisdictions. It's strange, but so the fact that we have it is important, and the fact that it's actually occurring should be questioned. So, and once again, the jurisdictions are required to, follow the framework of the action plans for evaluating the impacts, sharing that with their neighbors, and using our tools to do such.
Matt, so that would be also outside of Contra Costa County, so if they're your neighboring in Alameda County?
We have no teeth there. We could ask them to share with us. I mean, I would imagine, so when our jurisdictions circulate, they probably have a database and just blast it to everybody, which probably includes like Alameda County and San Joaquin County. Whether those counties are giving us that benefit, is highly doubtful. Yeah.
If I recall, only a quarter of them ever even said yes. I think we even had one. Why would I ever talk to them?
Yeah. Some are better, like in El Cerrito, they're always working with, with Alameda County and Albany, but in other parts of the county, they probably don't see it like that. Let's see. So what you're going to see in the checklist is all yes, no answers. So it's really yes, staff and elected officials. So not only do, at these sub-regional areas are they having to they have to send staff to a TAC meeting, and they have elected officials that they are sending to policy board meetings. Did they work to develop and implement the action plans? Are they using all the tools? And have they provided, feedback on the improvements into the model so we can keep the model up to date? Like I said, just yes, no stuff. CIP, this is something every jurisdiction is required to have a 5-year CIP that looks out 5 fiscal years at all of the capital projects that they will be, that they are planning. We only really care about the transportation component, and then so all we really ask for is a copy of their most recently adopted CIP, and we really only ask for the transportation component because this helps us feed our CIP, but they usually send us the entire 400-page document. And alternatively, they can prepare a 7-year CIP that is updated biannually, but we usually get a 5-year CIP. And so here, like I said, we're only asking for the transportation component, but we usually get the full thing. So usually I just provide a link because it's usually several hundred pages. TSM program, item 7. So TSM, Transportation Systems Management. You heard Stephanie talking about TDM, Transportation Demand Management. That's what this is. TSM was what it was referred to back in 2006 when we put when we put the GMP together. So really it's referred to as TDM now, and these are programs that seek to reduce reliance on the single occupant vehicle. Every jurisdiction is required to develop a local program, and we developed a model ordinance that they could all use as a template for that. The program should promote carpools, van pools, park and ride lots. That's what we named at the time. Now it's, other incentives like e-bike rebate programs, guaranteed ride home, bike share, car share, good things like that. Just so you know, every jurisdiction adopted one of these. Most of these have been on file since 1997. We really only ask for updates if they've got an updated ordinance. Otherwise, we've got these on file. And so we just really ask for their adoption date and resolution number.
We're too late now, but I was wondering, would it make sense to revisit items TDM for like a regional transportation coordination? To just have that discussion going, does it, I mean.
So if, for this group in general, like, I mean, are you wanting to hear about kind of countywide TDM activities and planning? Yeah, that's something we could bring to this group. We bring 511 Contra Costa here every few years kind of for an update, so that's something we could do. 511 Contra Costa, by the way, is our TDM arm of CCTA. We contract with them to implement the TDM programs around the county.
What's the
Demand.
Demand, okay, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's really dealing with that demand for the car and trying to funnel it elsewhere. So item 8, one of the very unique components of the growth management program, and another reason why I think the measure was passed, with 72 or 73% back in 2004, a very high approval rating. So urban limit line basically creates a line around the county within which development has to take place. So it focuses new development away from green fields, preserving those valuable agricultural lands, especially in East County, and reducing the need for new infrastructure, not just transportation, but sewer, utilities, fire, police. And if there are to be changes to that, larger than 30 acres, that requires voter approval. So jurisdictions can make minor changes, but anything more than 30 acres requires voter approval, and we very rarely see any major changes to the ULL. And 30-acre changes are almost unheard of. So what you're looking for, what you'll see in the checklist is really they're indicating whether or not they've got an urban limit line. Everybody does. Everybody has a resolution on file. However, if there were changes, if they adjusted their urban limit line, or they had proposed changes come across, the local council desk, we want to know about that. And that does happen from time to time. So item 9, adoption of the Measure J growth management element. This is something unique. Again, every jurisdiction is required in their general plan to have a growth management element. Once again, we prepared a model growth management element for them all to use as a template to adopt. They all adopted those back in, before 2009. Those elements outline goals and policies for managing growth locally and for achieving those goals. And like I said, they all have one on file. We did update our GME in 2022 to reflect some of those changes in state law. So we are now asking jurisdictions who do a wholesale update of their general plan, including the GME, to update that to be consistent with the new model GME. So once again, we have one on file for everybody. So what you're going to see in the checklist is generally just, the fact that they do have an adopted version. If we have a new one, that will be in the checklist. So I only know of one jurisdiction, maybe 2. One has updated their GME recently. One is going about that now. So we may see one this time around. Checklist item 10, posting of signs. So this is really a way to let the public know who's funding these projects, where's the money coming from, and to let them know that, the taxpayers know that their money's going towards it. So it's any project receiving more than $250,000 in Measure J, even Measure C funding if they're still Measure C funding as part of any project. They have to put up a sign according to specifications at the project site, saying as such that this is your tax dollars at work and CCTA is the one administering it. We think this is important. Here's a prominent example when we did the fourth bore, the Caldecott. But even small local projects should have signage up. If there's a project going on in your community and you think there's Measure J funds applied to it, and you don't see a sign, either call your city or call me, and we'll find out. So what they need to do in the checklist is provide a list of projects, and I do here and there add little requirements or suggestions to the checklist instructions, and so I've started asking for a photograph of the signs. That works. I think it works better for me. It probably works better for you. Sorry? We could do that.
I like the photo. No Insta, didn't happen.
No Insta. Yeah, that's an easy one. But so item 11, this is a kind of a complicated one. This is the one that Member Wayne pointed out earlier. This is MOE, maintenance of effort. So when Measure J first started, and this return to source, the 18% was envisioned and very popular amongst the cities. We wanted to make sure that that money did not replace or supplant current expenditures on maintenance. So we want the cities, whatever they were spending before Measure J on maintenance, we want them to continue spending. And then this new LSM money for Measure J would be in addition to that. So what we did is took kind of their previous to Measure J spending, and we used 1997 as a base year to determine that amount. So that we've now documented that amount. That is each jurisdiction's minimum MOE. They, as part of the checklist, need to tell us what their minimum MOE is and then how much they spent each fiscal year. They are supposed to, sometimes they average out over the 2 years, but really, and feel free to question them on that, they really are supposed to spend that amount each year. Because, like averaging two random, it's kind of just averaging two random years together, because does it average during all the years? So we really want to see it each individual year.
Do you track that by total dollar spend or a percentage of budget? What number are you actually tracking? Just total dollars?
Total dollars spent on maintenance.
Street maintenance.
Versus
the percentage of budget.
See, this is where I think you're going the same place I was going mentally, which is 1997 dollars are it's a lifetime away.
It's a fixed
use
figure.
The word inflation rate, so they could, if they're not meeting a 1997 number in 2023 on an annual basis, then to me that's
percentage of
gravely
budget,
underspending.
right, could be not commensurate to the total spend.
Right. Yeah, it's not about percentage. It is a fixed dollar amount. And just so you know, when you see Oakley's checklist, they have a $0 MOE because they didn't exist in 1997 as a city. So they always, you'll notice they always are spending a lot of money then. So in the checklist, they can give us a lot of information. Some of them give us a whole lot of their whole accounting system. Really, all we want to know is the minimum MOE and the 2 fiscal year expenditures. So I put this example here of, Brentwood's MOE is 146. It's pretty low because they were a new city at the time. And then their annual expenditures. But a lot of cities provide a lot of backup on there, but yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
for this and other stuff, I mean, you hear a theme, but that was 3 decades ago kind of thing, right? Like, how do we make sure our textbooks in our schools are not from Reagan's first term? How do we catch this up, right? I mean, and maybe it's a bigger policy thing, but I'm kind of.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a discussion that the board would have to have. I mean, maybe it comes from you guys, and, changes to the GMP are, not common. They happen, but because it requires all the jurisdictions signing off on this. So it would definitely be a discussion that I'm sure some jurisdictions would well, I don't know. I don't know what they would think about it, but it would have to be something that the board would have to approve.
Well, I think
So
that's
if it-
something that should happen. I mean, I just waiting 30 years and, not raising the bar at all doesn't seem appropriate. So, I mean, it's too late for maybe the next couple cycles, but
Well-
at some stage that should be addressed, I think.
So also, we are updating the countywide transportation plan, and that looks at a lot of these issues. It looks at some of them like, what could we do now, but also looks like, what would we do if we had a new sales tax measure? Because we can change all the rules when we've got a new sales tax measure. So perhaps we could agendize that as a discussion in this room, like what would some logical or reasonable potential changes to the GMP be? And maybe that would be for that the CTP could kind of look into it. It could potentially be a board discussion. If that's something you guys want to do in the future, we can certainly agendize that.
Well,
Sounds like.
Yeah, because and we can't get into it here, I realize, but
Yeah.
I guess the thing is, on a mathematical basis, it's easy for all of us, I think, to sit there and say, oh, wait, but then inflation and stuff like that. But items like these, while they may be crystal clear, sort of on a numbers formula on the back of, piece of paper or something but in the context of, does the policy still make sense, and what is it we're really trying to achieve with it? It may not make sense, for example, to ratchet that number up. There may be other things going on, other policies or other financial activities that are going on that we would say it would be oppressive if we did that sort of thing. I'm just saying it's rarely as simple as just, oh yeah, we need to catch everything up to today. There may be other factors we're not considering. So, yeah, that would be good to talk about.
Yeah, I think going through all those, those issues related to each one would be good.
Yeah, I mean, this one in particular.
Yep.
1997 as a baseline was probably pretty relevant in 1999. And you could see if someone wasn't meeting the spirit of measure, I guess it was C at the time, of spending the money on over and above improvements. Now, arguably, that horse has left the barn, and he's way down the road.
Well, and we may find that if we're looking at the numbers, nobody's really coming close. They're all far beyond their 97 numbers for the exact reasons that we all know, which things are a lot more expensive now. And so it may be like kind of beating a dead horse. It's like, well, it's not really a problem, so it doesn't need to be addressed.
How about just that Oakley didn't exist and their number is 0? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, this would be an opportunity to bring. Yeah, rebaseline. Yeah, I will work with the chair to agendize that at a future meeting. Item 12, submittal of the LSM reporting forms. So each jurisdiction is required to report on what they're spending all those return to source funds on. So every year we send them out, we send the finance departments what we call the LSM summary reporting form and audit reporting form. What they are required to do is tell us the amount of money received during that fiscal year. This is when it gets confusing. Not what fiscal year funds did they receive, but what funds did they receive that fiscal year. So there could be a year where a city receives 0 LSM funds just because of the timing. So anyway, they're required to provide what they received, what they had in the bank, what they spent by category. There's 6 categories. I'll show those in a second, and you've probably seen them. And then for each expenditure over $10,000, they need to fill out the audit reporting form. So we want to know detailed expenditures of $10,000 or more. So, and then we need a reporting metric to go along with it. So like square feet of slurry seal, or number of linear feet of sidewalk installed, or number of ADA curb cuts installed, things like that. And so here's a screenshot of what that form looks like. The 6 categories are local streets and roads. So, you know, all the slurry seals, the pothole repairs, things like that. Growth management, planning, and compliance. So they can charge staff time spent at the RTPC meetings, developing the action plans, working on their checklist, anything related to growth management program compliance. They can charge staff time to this return to source money. Transit capital and operations, trails, parking facilities, and then TDM. So those are all, basically anything transportation related is eligible. They just need to let us know what it was. And so in your checklist, you're going to see the 2 fiscal year reporting forms and the 2 audit reporting forms. You are free to ask questions about that. We did have a question, I believe it was Oakley's last time, just because they weren't reporting very, I think it was that the expenditures looked really low in both fiscal years they reported. And it's one of those things that a lot of, you know, as you see more of these, you'll see some jurisdictions spend every cent they get immediately. Some jurisdictions save up for a few fiscal years and then spend a bunch in one fiscal year. But what we did with Oakley, because the 2 reports they submitted looked so weird, I put together like 10 or 12 years worth of reports. And you could see over the course of that, they had spent all their money. They had just been spending it, you know, in chunks. So it's not uncommon to see those type of things, but you're only looking at 2 years. That's all you have to go by, so feel free to question it. Hey, we're at item 13. I've only seen items submitted once for item 13. It's really just anything, you know, that was not indicated elsewhere on the checklist where they feel like they've gone above and beyond the requirements, and they can put it there. You don't expect to see anything other than an NA generally. Do I have any? Whoa, I have some. I think that's all I have. So I'm just going to say, you know, checklist season is open. You will have a checklist in your next packet. I received a draft checklist a couple weeks ago that is going to a council next month. So we will be getting our first. That being said, I would have liked to have had maybe 4 by now. You know, we've got 8 months till June and 1 checklist. So I would, if you have contacts locally, especially say city manager's office or planning department, that's a great place to inquire. Let them know that the monies are available. If you want to know how much money I'm going to start sending you guys out the allocations by jurisdiction so you know how much your jurisdiction is entitled to. And you can let the jurisdiction know, hey, we're sitting on $800,000 or $2 million. Let's get our checklist submitted. And when we get checklists all at once late, all that does is create more meetings for you guys where all you're doing is looking at checklists. And to me, that's your job. It's, something you're supposed to be doing, but I don't want it just to take up every agenda for 8 months in a row.
Which ones are the jurisdictions that have submitted their checklists already?
None.
Okay.
Like I said, I've got one draft
Okay.
that has been submitted, and I'll say, Jency, you've got no work to do. Concord has submitted a draft, and they're taking it to their council next month.
It's just rough when things get late in the season and we're doing like 3 in a night. 3 in a night's hard.
I only
It's
did that
tough.
to you once last time, and that is
Yeah,
my
yeah.
absolute limit. I try and keep it at 2, but when we only do 2, it takes a lot of time. So, but
I noticed that there's something potentially missing, which is climate mitigation. So CCTA doesn't ask anything about their climate mitigation impact, any impacts on what they're doing for flooding or sea level rise or, urban heat islands, asphalt heat. That's not part of this checklist. Is that covered somewhere else or?
I mean, not under Measure J, under the Growth Management Program, I would say, they're required to do their climate action plans for other entities. But yeah, you're right. And climate action plans didn't exist probably when this checklist and the Growth Management Program was designed or developed. So that being said, sounds like they're not only do maybe you guys want to discuss existing items being refreshed, but maybe the idea of adding new items. So I think that's a fair
I would like to
conversation.
submit that to you all because I could see a great impact throughout the county for not addressing some of these things.
Yeah, but
the
it's
thing
already
is-
been established. The checklist for the Measure J funds have been established. We can't make changes to that. Certainly, we can bring it up and ask them to address it when they do their presentations.
The board can elect to update the growth management program, but I would say it's a big step for them to add a requirement, a whole new requirement.
Yeah, and the thing is that, the fact that the housing stuff is in there as well, I see where the housing and transportation interaction is, and that's meaningful. And certainly, nothing could be more interrelated than transportation and climate action. But at the same time, I don't want to bloviate, but I want to say, at the same time, if there are things like housing is being managed by, the state pretty aggressively, and the climate action as well. And I think the last thing necessarily that we want to be is another report out for the same information that people are already under pretty severe compliance for. Certainly, we can be curious and stuff and ask questions in those directions, but creating another place where, if you want to get this money, then you have to tell us the same thing that you filed a 470-page plan that has to go through all this compliance and review. We don't want to kill our city staffs with too much, additional compliance activity. That's all.
And I want to limit this conversation today to an agendized conversation because I think it's worth having and, considering all options. I will say, especially, because I think it is a useful conversation, especially if the authority is looking at a new measure, that we're thinking ahead about what could be part of a new measure. And a new measure may involve a higher rate of return to source to local jurisdictions. And if that went up to 25 or 30%, then we could consider adding new requirements. But I want to keep that conversation to a more formalized venue. But I just want to wrap up the checklist review tutorial by saying that, I try and get the checklists into shape before you see them. So I do go back and forth with jurisdictions if I get something that just looks bad or things are missing. I'm working behind the scenes to get it, what I think is an acceptable, approvable checklist. That being said, you all should feel free to reach out first to me if you see a checklist and you see something wrong. Feel free to inquire with me and like, is something missing here? And then when the jurisdiction comes in to present, you all, I would say to focus on, questions that are related to the checklist. You can ask them anything, but I would say focus on items that are related to the checklist, which is all those things related to development, transportation, housing, land use. But anything is fair game, but, feel free to challenge them. If you want backup, ask for backup. If you want clarification, ask for clarification. That's why they're here. We don't want to ask them about things they're not really, that aren't in their purview or aren't in this group's purview, but, we do get questions kind of out of left field just because it's you don't always have city staff in front of you to ask, but I would say try and keep your questions focused on items pertaining to the checklist. But, it's a good opportunity to ask staff pointed questions and get honest answers.
Matt, could you provide template language for each of us to share with their cities if we want to nudge them to submit their checklists?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I can do that. I would love to do that.
Great, thanks.
So Matt, I appreciate the kind of the last couple things you said. So, that you guys are reviewing it, because my assumption when I joined this group, whenever it was, a year and a half ago, was that something didn't get to this group without at least ticking all the boxes and being ready to approve. So the statement at the beginning that we can turn something down kind of surprises me a little bit, because I don't think it should have got that far. How much we press them or ask clarifying questions, I think we've been doing, I think, a good job of that. What I think is interesting is some presentations are frankly pretty vague and I'll just say not a very good presentation, and others are more thorough. My assumption is they all passed. And so I think the purpose of this group is discussing the future and giving input from, the group that, hey, maybe it should be updated or something new should be added. I think that's a really healthy conversation. And then I think setting a tone to the cities that maybe backs you guys up about, the quality of it or vagueness or whatever. And one of the questions, he asked this question about, are you working together? My question is really about the money that you're spending. Was it well spent? Was it a bad project? Trust me, there are plenty that in hindsight you wish you hadn't done. And then there are others that are great, or one that gave you a return that just shocked you at how well it was implemented. And I think those things are missing. I mean, it's lay it out, here's the 10 things we did, tick the boxes, rather than was this extra money, as we're defining, that we all voted for, is it being spent to the highest use? And so I think a conversation about what are we really, where's the input we're giving, and I get that it takes way longer than we should ever expect. I mean, it's just the process, but us having that input into it, I think, is where the value is. And I find the presentations quite interesting, and I learn a lot to ask other people and stuff like that. But whether or not I would ever vote, I guess it would have to be incredibly egregious for me to vote no. And I would hope that you wouldn't even let them present it if you thought that.
I agree with that statement. I try and get it. I will say it has to meet minimum qualifications for it to get past you. Hopefully it's above that, but like you said, there are different magnitudes of.
Okay, well, anyway, I was just, I mean, I think it's a good process, so.
But, you know, that being said, it's certainly within your purview to reject a checklist for whatever reason, you know, have them come back again. And you almost did that, I think, with the Oakley checklist in the past because of that question. I think we resolved it in a good manner, but, you know, you aren't a rubber stamp group, you know, and I think the board would appreciate it if, you know, if you had a concern and elevated it.
One of the things we certainly saw, I think, as a common theme in the past year, and I just heard this from you too as well, is just that there's been a recurring theme of people showing up and presenting the checklist, and the words we hear are, they've only been in this year, there's been a lot of turnover in the community staff, whatever, there's a lot of challenges, you know, in continuity, it sounds like, for a lot of these city staff, and so it's a lot of these people are coming in by the seat of their pants because they've been thrust into the position.
That's true, very true.
That said, I was going to propose that we just reject 2 out of the 20 every year to kind of
Spice
keep
things up.
keep it spice.
I'll second that.
I have 2 questions. For the 23 million, is that allocated already? How does that work? Can El Cerrito just show up and say, we have this project, or?
No, so you need your checklist approved to receive that money.
But that's not allocated yet. Nobody's taking that 23 million.
Right. It's been allocated. We know how much El Cerrito is due to receive out of that 23 million. We know their allocation, but it will sit in our bank account until they submit their checklist.
Okay. And my second question, going back to mitigation, I wanted to understand, how does the checklist affect, like, impact fees affect growth or expansion? So is that a city decision where each local jurisdiction can decide, you know, we don't need impact fees, or are we encouraging impact fees? Or
Yeah, we require that, at least for transportation, that they have impact fees.
But we don't say what that value is. It could be $1.
Right, they could be very low, you know.
Okay. Yeah. So we're just asking.
But what we do say is that those fees should, you know, those fees should cover the costs of litigation.
And I think, Rosa, because there are a lot of discussions around housing, is that where you're going with this? And how much some of these fees keep adding up to?
In regards to transportation in El Cerrito, my biggest gripe is the 80 corridor, which is impacted by the traffic for the Solano County traffic. So it's not growth in El Cerrito. El Cerrito's been the same. So I would want to encourage high-rise buildings along a certain corridor in El Cerrito so that people can have shorter commutes, and traffic would improve throughout the region. So I would be open to lower impact. I mean, depending, the community can decide, neighbors can decide, but it would make sense for cities that are closer to the core to promote development, to help with transportation. I mean, that's one aspect to consider.
That is a good point. I think generally they kind of follow that trend, like the cities with kind of better built-up transportation systems tend to have lower fees. The highest fees are in East County, whereas you're looking maybe in West County per unit, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, where in East County you're looking at $25,000 per unit. So, yeah.
Well, and that's and items 2 and 3 are essentially kind of at odds slightly with each other and the state, in the sense of this, the concept of we need more housing, right? So that's, I think, item 3 addresses housing or whatever. But item number 2 is the requiring fees to offset the costs of, and so this is that there's this silent friction here about, well, but it's difficult for us to build the housing because the fees are getting so high and so on and so forth. So the development fees, et cetera, et cetera. And then this all comes back to, you were kind of saying, well, the state has requirements. So there's all these things that are sort of silently in conflict with each other. The state will say, well, here's your RENA numbers. You gotta allocate for this, right? And so people rezone, and here's, room to build. There's, we've allocated that this can be this level of density. But that level of density plus the fees may not equal that someone is gonna come in and build that actual construction. Which means then you're going to fail on number 3 and you're going to fail on the RENA, but you met the fee thing. And I'm not criticizing the necessity of having the fees to offset, but this is this silent friction that's running all the time, and there's a delicate balance there.
Noticing the time, I'm going to ask if there are any burning final questions, and hope there's none. It's unfortunate. I think the next item is one that a lot of what we discussed here around climate mitigation and changing the checklist actually would have been a great segue into the next item. Matt and I kibitzed a bit on the agenda and concluded that we didn't know how long the checklist review tutorial would take, and that the third item could be sacrificial, since I do want us to be at least close to our scheduled closing time, especially on my wife's birthday. Yeah, so I suggest, Matt, sounds like we're not going to have a lot of checklists next month, that we can pick up the next item at our October meeting around the bylaw reviews, and maybe how we can maybe get the committee into more discussions like the ones we just had. And so maybe we leave that item for next month. And before we leave the previous item, I need for the record to ask you, did we get any written public comments on this item?
We have not received any public comments.
And no one, even if somebody was out in the public, though, we've probably lost them by now, so.
There are no public comments.
Oh, I still have to ask for comment? Do I still have to ask for comment if we delay the item, or can the comments be held? Okay, well, then I shall ask. For the item that we're going to defer.
I think you need to make a motion to move the item to the next meeting, is that?
So moved.
Thank you.
Motion for adjournment.
I want you to also take into, I'll do this, consideration that we are going to be moving forward with canceling October due to admin staff availability. So if that plays into that as well. The next meeting would not be until December.
Which chair will not be available for. So that puts us into January.
Don't we cancel December, or is it
No,
November?
We combine November and
gets
December.
melded with December.
And change the date?
And the date's changed. So October is impossible?
Yeah, unfortunately, due to admin staff availability.
Well, so this item then would get moved to January, it sounds like?
Yeah, or December.
December.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not here in December, so it's a little awkward.
I'm here.
Yeah, true. Well, no, I'm just in terms of some of the,
I mean, we can coordinate that, Chair. If there's an item you'd like to be here for, we can hold it till you're here and maybe do the checklist. And actually, Tim Hale, we had earmarked for the December meeting to do his executive director presentation to you guys.
okay. All right, so to keep us kosher, what do we need to do with the item that I hear unanimous consent to do at a future meeting? So a motion to move it to a future agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. Can I hear?
So moved.
Thank you.
A second.
Thank you.
Sorry, who was the second?
And does that need a vote or?
Yeah, just one moment here. Make sure.
Does it have to be roll call? Good question.
Yeah, for us it does, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Member Ash?
Yeah.
Member Bankert?
Aye.
Member Esquivel?
Can I go neutral?
Sure. Member Essel Sego?
Aye.
Member James?
Aye.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Saunders?
Yes.
Member Member Stark?
Aye.
Member Wayne?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovejoy?
Aye.
Chair Carr? Okay, the motion passes unanimously with Member Esquivel abstaining and members Ajir, Chahal, Patel, Shakaren, Torf absent.
Can I ask you guys to give us the dates as soon as you can of what changes I've deleted October, but whatever date in November or December, if you would set it soon?
Yeah, so
would
that
be
should be on your calendar potentially already. And then the full calendar, you should have received either at the beginning of the year or when you joined the committee as well with that information.
Maybe we can send a cancellation, invite,
Yeah,
or cancel the invite for.
I'll check the Outlook and just see. I'll
Is
make sure.
2025 out already as well, or just?
Not yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say
yeah.
through 2024.
Okay, so December's looks like it's December 11th, so that's
That's
a real
correct.
date. That's
Yep.
not, okay, fine.
So November 27th is off.
Correct.
No November, right?
Okay, thank you.
So do we still need to, member staff comments?
Yeah, if you don't mind just running through those quickly.
Sure. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share regarding member staff comments? I have none at this time. No one on the public to speak. Correspondence and communications. Does anyone have any comments? Future agenda items?
I was just going to say, there is a correspondence item in your packet regarding the Martinez Presto Shuttle launch, which Jack talked to you about in July. It's now going live.
Thank you, Matt. So future agenda items, there were 2 or 3 that kind of spun out of the discussion of the checklist, and I assume we've captured those.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that concludes our meeting. Yes?
Correct.
Yay. Don't forget to get your free parking validated. Otherwise, you'll pay $8.99.
Can I recommend cookie